Hello learners, welcome to this online study session on the Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I am Vaishali Sharma, Assistant Professor from Delhi University. I will be taking you through this unit wherein we will be exploring different aspects about the novel. In the first study session today, we will be knowing about the author and the brief introduction about the text. So let us begin. Toni Morrison, the 8th American to receive the Nobel Prize in Literature, was born Chloe Anthony Wofford. Her family had migrated north to escape racial prejudices and to seek educational and employment opportunities. In Ohio, Morrison was predominantly surrounded by racist whites. However, this did not impede her growth and success. She attended Lorraine High School, where she excelled as a student. Her plethora of work includes novels like The Bluest Eye, which was published in 1970, Sulla, which was published in 1973, Song of Solomon, which was published in 1977, Tar Baby, published in 1981, and the most famous novel, Beloved, published in 1987, Jazz, 1992, Paradise, 1998, Love was published in 2003, and other miscellaneous writings like Dreaming Emmett was performed in 1986 but remained unpublished, Playing in the Dark, Whiteness and the Literary Imagination, 1992, Remember, The Journey to School Integration, published in 2004, and for children with Son Slade Morrison, she wrote The Big Box in 1999, The Book of Mean People in 2002, The Lion or the Mouse in 2003, The Ant or the Grasshopper in 2003, The Poppy or the Snakes in 2004. Before customizing the work of Toni Morrison, it is necessary to delineate the character of Afro-American fiction. It is primarily a social treatise which deals with the social, psychological, and humanistic milieu. It is a microcosm of the entire Afro-American existence. It has a plot, a structure, a language intertwined with cultural symbols, patterns, beliefs, and practices, and the author's point of view or vision. Through their pen, Afro-American writers try to comprehend the overwhelming nature of life. Afro-American women writers in the 70s and 80s like Alice Walker, Paul Marshall, Afro-American women writers in the 70s and 80s like Alice Walker, Paul Marshall, Gloria Naylor, Alex DeVue have been able to explore the self as central rather than marginal entity. Early Afro-American writers like Zora Neale Hurston, Frances Harper, Jessica Fassett, Nella Larsen, and Anne Petrie had also tied their hand in this direction. Quest for personal freedom, demand for respect, and a desire for a self were the major themes for these novelists. Toni Morrison is perhaps the most formally sophisticated novelist in the history of African American literature, who astutely describes aspects of human lives. There are many writers in the world who are willing to describe the ugliness of the world. Morrison shows her uniqueness by revealing the hope and beauty that underlines this ugliness. Her artistic excellence lies in achieving perfect balance between Black literature and writing what is universally true. Although firmly grounded in the cultural heritage and social concerns of Black Americans, her work transcends narrowly prescribed conceptions of ethnic literature, exhibiting universal mythical patterns and overtones. Her novels thus moan on universal concerns. The signal accomplishment of Toni Morrison as a writer is that she has managed uncannily to invert her own mode of literary representation. Her themes are often those expected of naturalistic fiction, the burdens of history, the determining social effects of race, gender, or class. But they are also the great themes of lyrical modernism, love, death, betrayal, and burden of individual responsibility for her or his own fate. Like Golding, her novels have a fabulistic quality as she has been directly influenced by Afro-American folktales. Like George Eliot, she has a rare gift for characterization. She can compel her readers to learn about themselves by experiencing through her characters their states of mind which they would ordinarily disavow. As a result of her literary and artistic abilities and competence, Toni Morrison stands in the vanguard of contemporary writers of fiction, transcending both her racial identity and gender. Her first novel, The Bluest Eye, published in 1970, received mixed reviews. It did not sell well and was out of print by 1974. Critical recognition and praise for Toni Morrison grew with each novel. Her second novel, Sulla, published in 1973, made both the critics and the readers pay attention to her. She received the National Book Critics Circle Award for her third novel, Song of Solomon, in 1977, and the Pulitzer Prize for Beloved in 1987. She received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1993 for, in the words of the Swedish Academy, her visionary force and poetic import which give life to an essential aspect of American reality. On October 7, 1993, Toni Morrison became the 8th woman and first black woman to be awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. When she learned of the honor, she said, "This is a palpable tremor of delight for me." Toni Morrison believes in the function of the novel as the medium that gives voice to the unheard, unspoken lives of the black people. Morrison wants her prose to recreate black speech, to restore the language that black people spoke to its original power. For her, language is the thing that black people love so much, the saying of words, holding them on the tongue, experimenting with them, playing with them. It is a love, a passion. Its function is like a preacher's, to make you stand up out of your seat, make you lose yourself and hear yourself. The worst of all possible things that could happen would be to lose that language. Her prose has the quality of speech. Morrison deliberately strives for this effect to produce literature that speaks rather than reads. She hears her prose as she writes, and during the revision process, she cuts phrasing which sounds literary or written rather than spoken. She rejects critics' assertions that her prose is rich to those who say her prose is poetic. She responds that metaphors are natural in black speech. Her strong ties to her black culture and oral tradition create a rich foundation for her novels. For Morrison, all good art has been political, and the black artist has a responsibility to the black community. She aims at capturing the unknown entity that defines what makes a black book, oblivious of the fact whether the people in the books are black or not. She thinks that one characteristic of black writers is a constant hunger and disturbance that never ends. Her novels are a reflection of the experiences of the black community and blacks in general. Her work suggests who survived under what circumstances and why, who were the supposed fugitives, what was legal in the community as opposed to what was legal outside it. In the saloon interview taken by Zia Jaffrey, she asserts, "I am very much interested in how African American literature is perceived in this country and written about and viewed. It's been a long and hard struggle, and there's a lot of work yet to be done." The endeavor in this series is to scrutinize the unspoken lexis of Toni Morrison's works and to unveil the layers of humanistic concerns that provide denotations to her works and words. Earlier studies on this writer have concentrated on adjudging her as a writer addressing problems of black people. However, the study would try to extend this notion to encompass the problem of whole human community by assimilating blacks in the general drama of life. Before dyeing the strings of Morrison's novels with the color of humanistic concerns, it is important to delineate the term humanism from which these humanistic concerns arise. Humanism stresses the importance of the individual human personality and its power to learn from suffering and to rise above circumstances, and in the process, it takes cognizance of the paradox that lies at the root of life. The individual is part and parcel of the cultural environment that shapes him, while the self is always in conflict with the culture that shapes him. Its aim is to allow human values to guide one's course in life and affirm those universal truths that transcend dogmatism and parochialisms. It acts as a counter to all types of authoritarianism, intolerance, loss of self, alienation, automation, and gradual deterioration from the level of the human to the mechanical or the animal. Humanism, as Kurtz puts it, is life-affirming and not life-denying. It seeks to elicit the possibilities of life and establish the conditions of a satisfactory life for all and not only a few. It grounds humanitarianism, providing foundations for a normative critique as well as explanation of social conditions. In this respect, humanism holds a solid ground in the writings of Toni Morrison. Her novels like The Bluest Eye, Sola, Beloved, and many more explore the conditions of men, women, and children in the face of hostility and alienation from the outside world. In the afterword of her novel, The Bluest Eye, Morrison beautifully portrays this point. She says, "The assertion of racial beauty was not a reaction to the self-mocking, humorous critique of cultural racial foibles common in all groups, but against the damaging internalization of assumptions of immutable inferiority originating in an outside gaze." In her noble lecture, Morrison gives voice to the predicament of alienated individuals present in her novels. She says, and I quote, "Tell us what is it to be a woman so that we may know what it is to be a man. What moves at the margin? What is it to have no home in this place, to be set adrift from the one you knew? What is it to live at the edge of towns that cannot bear your company?" Morrison's style combines these unrealistic elements with the realistic presentation of life and characters. This mixture has been called magical realism. Initially, she objected to the label magical realism, feeling it diminished her work or even dismissed it. Now, however, she acknowledges that it does identify the supernatural and unrealistic elements in her writings. In The Bluest Eye, the magical appears in the failure of marigolds to bloom and the belief by some members of the community in Soaphead Church's powers. The juxtaposition of the unrealistic with the realistic makes her novels depict the true image of life. This magic realism helps us identify with her characters, their pains, their sorrows, their happiness, and their living. For Morrison, Black history is the core of Black identity. In Beloved, Seth, the protagonist, is a victim of sexist and racist oppression. The story is narrated through a series of flashbacks. Morrison is not only concerned with what history had recorded in the slave narratives, but what it has omitted, the unvoiced past. This unspeakable past, if not claimed, will create an unspeakable present and future, she believes. With Sola, published in 1973, the Black cultural past is represented by the family, Sola's mother and grandmother Hannah and Eva Pease, and by Bottom, the community in which they live. In her search for identity and self-identification, Sola chooses to reject her past and to define herself in opposition to her family and community. In the present novel, thus Morrison uses the past, cultural, political, and familial as both revealing and healing for her characters. In psychological assessment of characters and their lives, Morrison is akin to Camus, Kafka, and the likes. Yet she is diverse as well. She affords an answer to the problems of her characters. Unlike Camus and Kafka, Morrison does not leave the readers with a pessimistic outlook. Her characters are given an answer, and though good may not come to thee always, but there is always a scope for finding answers. Thus, Morrison's writing endeavors can be perfectly adjudged against the backdrop of humanism. Her fictional characters are constantly engaged in perplexing struggles to maintain their human dignity and emotional sensitivity in an impersonal, alien, and frequently threatening world. As the epitaph in her Love claims, it takes a lifetime to read a face behind a face and ages to decipher words behind a dog. The novel, Bluest Eye, has its roots in a real incident. In her afterword to the Penguin edition of the novel, Toni Morrison recounts an incident that led first to a short story and then to the novel. One day, a girl in her school expressed a wish for blue eyes. The younger Morrison felt angry at this. The sorrow in her voice seemed to call for sympathy, and I faked it for her. Angry at this, the sorrow in her voice seemed to call for sympathy, and I faked it for her. But astonished by the desecration she proposed, I got mad at her instead, said Toni Morrison in an incident some 20 years later in the 1960s when the black leaders were shouting, "Black is beautiful," in assertion of their racial pride. The result arises a short story which she wrote in 1962 for a writer's workshop she attended while teaching at the Harvard University. The story elicited a favorable response from some of the members of the group. She took it up again for revision in 1964 after she had divorced her husband in 1964 and had settled in Sciences with her 2 sons. The novel was only 3/4 completed when she sent it to an editor who liked it. Thereupon, the novel was completed and published in 1970. The genesis of the novel in a childhood incident has already been pointed out. Even though Toni Morrison insists that her novels are not autobiographical, but there are some parallels between some details in The Bluest Eye and her own life experiences. The story is set in the town of Lorain, Ohio, where she had grown up. The McTeer girls, Claudia and Frida, are roughly of the same age that the younger Toni Morrison and her elder sister would have been in 1941 when the novel is set. Like her mother, Mrs. McTeer likes singing, and like her father, Mr. McTeer throws a man down the stairs and a tricycle after him when he suspects him of molesting his daughters. As pointed out earlier, Pauline Williams' family shifts from Alabama to Connecticut and then to Lorain, Ohio. And again, like her father, Chloe moves from Georgia to Lorain, Ohio. The story of the novel deals with the tragic search of a poor black girl for blue eyes. The Bluest Eye, in which the emphasis is on devastating effects of the beauty standards of the dominant culture on the self-image of a female adolescent, is placed. Toni Morrison gets across a very powerful idea that is found in every society today. Although the book is written during the 1940s and most of the events that occur mirror that time period, the main idea transcends to this day and age. With a persuasive argument in mind and a poor innocent black girl to appeal to the reader's pathos, Morrison craftily writes her story. She uses the rhetorical knowledge that arguments are often improved through the use of sensory details that allow us to see the reality of a problem or through stories that make specific cases and instances come alive. Morrison's argument is how influential a society can be on an individual and how strongly its ideas and views are impressed upon that individual. The idea and views that she speaks of mostly pertain to beauty and what makes an individual beautiful. This idea of beauty can turn someone's life upside down and in the end lead them to madness. Thus, Morrison is trying to impress upon her readers what a negative effect society's ideas and views can have on an individual and how that individual's life is changed forever. Morrison has written of desolation and decay because this is where, as victims of our environments, we are left. It is a tragedy that Pecola had to undergo such gruesome chain of events. Again, readdressing the causal argument society has a standard of beauty, Pecola does not meet the standard. Her life is plagued by event after event which impresses her ugliness upon her. She becomes the object of hatred by all of the members of her town. Her unstable family life leads to her rape, which further enhances the problem. Pecola then becomes pregnant and begins her descent towards madness. Her life is then changed forever. She will never be the same. At the end of the book, one of the main characters, Claudia, reflects as an adult that people need someone like Pecola in their lives. The contention is that what fate lies for Pecola has its genesis in her upbringing and in her parents' insecure attitude in life. The dilemmas and predicaments are transferred in the blood of Pecola. While probing the liaison between her parents and society, and the society and the black people in general, the study has strived to show the general decay and degradation that has marred our society. Pecola suffers because her parents suffered, and Pecola's child died because no life could survive in such hostile, alienated environment. Estrangement of a small girl by the insensitive society is enough to unsurface the ghastly face of the social order.